This show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a revolutionary new daily fantasy game whereby you pick 2, 3, or 4 players to go over or under their fantasy point projections, and if you're correct, you win. Pick 2 or more players from the same sport or league, or go cross leagues for your parlay. Use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, 5, and receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. But first, sign up at prizepicks.com to start winning today. This show is brought to you by mybookie.ag. Between the NFL, college ball, and the Major League Baseball playoffs, there's no shortage of games to watch, and with thousands of lines available on all your favorite sports and events, you can turn your game day into payday with MyBookie. If you're the type of guy who likes to back the big favorites, consider putting a couple in a parlay for a much bigger payout. Not only do parlays make meaningless games exciting, but more importantly, they give you a chance to turn ordinary bets into real moneymakers. And don't forget the underdogs. They have a ton of value. The thing about the NFL is that underdogs are never really dogs on Sunday. Every team truly does have a chance to win, and you do too. Game spreads, championship futures, player prop bets. It's never too late to get in on the action and start turning your sports knowledge into actual cash. Sign up at MyBookie, and when you do, use our promo code 3YARDS. That's the word 3 yards to claim a deposit match dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. That's promo code 3YARDS for your bonus when you make your deposit. Stacked UFC cards, presidential prop bets, all the major sports and more. Sign up today to begin your winning season exclusively at MyBookie.
Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
And we're on, and welcome to another edition of 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Artiaga, full boat today. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here. Simon, we didn't get your reaction. Me and Chris had a whole Tua show, which is currently setting download records. People really like Tua, and they like winning. They don't like losing, and they don't like things that don't have to do with shiny new quarterback. What's your reaction to the announcement from last week?
I think it was shock, I suppose. I'd been pretty vocal about him not coming into the lineup, given that, the Dolphins are 3-1 in the last 4 games. We'd won, 62-17 or whatever it was over the last 2. So it kind of felt like an unusual time, really, to go to him, especially given that the week before Flores had said, A, if he was my son, I wouldn't want him playing, and then B, didn't let him play against the 49ers even to come in and hand the ball off. It seemed a little bit weird then to all of a sudden turn to him. But, we're not going to change the past. It is what it is. And the future is now. So looking forward to it.
You don't buy any of the conspiracy theories making the rounds out there, right? That this came from somewhere else in the building?
No. I just think no, I don't. I think it's ludicrous to suggest that Brian Flores would suddenly, he's in a very strong position. Why would he kowtow to? And also, I don't understand why anybody would say that. The Dolphins are 3-3, and they're a game out of the lead of the AFC East. Why would anybody say that's the move they should be making, given they've gone 3-1 over the last month? That would just make no sense. I don't see Stephen Ross doing it. I don't see Chris Greer doing it. To be honest, Brian Flores doesn't strike me as the sort of guy that would just take that and say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do it." Brian Flores is the sort of guy who is strong moralistically, and I would suspect Brian Flores would turn around and say, "You know what? If that's really what you want to do, then you can get somebody else to run your ball club, because I'm not going to do it." He doesn't seem like a yes man on any level to me, so I just can't see that happening.
Yeah,
There's I will point out this thing about Brian Flores, and this seems to be like sort of a developing pattern, maybe, to where he will say one thing and you'll be like certain where he stands, and then change his mind in a week. Like it happened last year about the quarterback position. I remember all of a sudden there was an about face after, I think it was around the owners meetings or somewhere around there. As far as who the quarterback was. Actually, there were several about faces with respect to the quarterback position last year. And it was like we always thought we knew where he stood, based on what he was saying, and then a week later he just totally contradicted you, and that's, I think that's sort of a developing pattern. So really just be careful. It's a lesson to us, I think, in reading into what he says when he says something like, hey, if Tua was my kid, I wouldn't want him being pushed out there because of media narratives and stuff like that. Like, we want to be careful with him and stuff. We read into that because we're normal people. And we think normal things, and and we want to just take him at face value, but sometimes he's definitely flip-flopped around on this position specifically, but maybe on some other things too. So I think that's something to keep an eye on.
Now, Simon, this wasn't handled correctly, right? Like, this wasn't the best rollout that
No,
Tua
very badly.
Tagovailoa could have had, huh? No?
Very badly. And I think, I don't know if we're able to say how it got out there. I don't know if that's common knowledge, but it's very poor handling, and I think it reflects very badly on. Unfortunately, I think it reflects very, very badly on Brian Flores, because it just doesn't seem to be the way that they would handle anything. But also, I think probably what it would have done is would have upset some team members, because this is Fitz's team. He's clearly hugely well respected by everybody, offense, defense, special teams, and to think that it would have been handled that way, I think would have upset some of the players. And, understandably, I think there would have been a bit of a backlash, especially amongst some of the more senior players in the team, going to Flo and saying, look, this is not how it should have been handled. And, my understanding is there was a fairly sincere apology as to how it was handled. And, hopefully they can come together. But it's not great for Tua either. He doesn't want to come into that atmosphere where something's been so badly handled and it's not his fault.
Yeah. Now, on Thursday, Simon, I don't know if you listened to our podcast, but Chris and I, we talked about what the national media was saying about it. And, we're not going to get into, the Twitter beefs that we had on the 3YPC account last week. But it continued on
When you
Sunday.
say we, you mean you?
Well, yeah. But I I do it under the banner.
Mostly, I tried to play peacemaker at one point, and then Jeff Schwartz decided to turn it into a shit fight anyway. And so whatever.
Hey, but mission accomplished. We gained a ton of followers, and we had everybody on our side. We created a mob on Thursday, but it continued on Sunday. Okay, all the pregame shows. All of a sudden, we're extremely relevant now in the grand scheme of things, which is, I guess, a good thing. But I found myself in a very weird place as I watched the ESPN pregame show, and the only guy who agreed with starting Tua was Rex Ryan. So, wow. Simon, what do you make of this backlash? I never saw this backlash for starting Joe Burrow or starting Justin Herbert after they almost killed Tyrod Taylor. So, why do we deserve this backlash?
Well, because the Bengals and the Chargers went 3-3 playing good football. I mean, that's pretty obvious, surely. I mean, there was no competition for Joe Burrow. And really, once Tyrod Taylor got stabbed in the chest, there was no competition for Justin Herbert either. I mean, if the Dolphins were 0-6, I could understand it, but they're 3-3. They've just beaten the 49ers, who on Sunday absolutely waxed the Patriots at home with pretty much the same team, save for a slightly more healthy Jimmy Garoppolo and Emmanuel Mosley back at corner. Beyond that, it's the same team that we waxed 42-17, 43-17. So, that's why there was no fanfare around Burrow and fanfare around Herbert, because the scenarios were completely different.
But well, let's be fair though. Also, I mean, the criticism that we're seeing is because the team is not because the team is too good. The criticism we were arguing about was that the team is too bad to start Tua. That's what they were saying. The offensive line is awful, is one of the worst in the league. We're going to get Tua killed. You shouldn't start him right now. Like they're saying Tua can't succeed in this situation that we're setting him up for. So, I mean, you're kind of taking a viewpoint like, hey, we won 3 out of our last 4. Very true. We outscored opponents by a lot in several of the games. We beat the 49ers, who are doing work right now. And I think that's all very rational. but they're saying that Tua shouldn't be starting because the team around him can't protect him, can't do work for him.
Yeah, but I think that comes from not watching games week in, week out. I mean, that's not. I just, with the greatest respect to people like Dan Orlovsky and those people that said that, I don't think they're sitting down watching the Dolphins week in and week out. I just don't. That's just the way it is. And I think you had to sit down and watch Brian Baldinger's 9-minute video of the Dolphins offensive line the other day to see how well, but also some of the limitations that the guys have had, or not limitations, some of the issues that they've had, because I clearly don't think that they're limited. I think it's just an experience thing. But I just thought it was a fairly embarrassing hot take that the Dolphins had the worst offensive line, because it just clearly, doesn't stack up in reality. And it seemed to be a lot of reliance on Pro Football Focus numbers. And let's remember, Pro Football Focus had Stephon Gilmore as the 33rd ranked cornerback in the NFL last year, and he won NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And I think that pretty much tells you all that you need to know about those rankings. So
I'll give you one better, because I went digging for them last week. There was a time where Xavier Howard had given up 7 catches for 96 yards in a span of 6 weeks, and he had 4 interceptions. And in those 6 weeks, he was the 3rd best corner. I want to meet the 1st and the 2nd best corner.
Yeah, I mean, I don't pay any heed to those specific rankings, and and as an aside, I find it fairly embarrassing for Al Michaels to have to read out on Sunday Night Football that player X is ranked 5th overall, when a cursory look at by using your eyes could tell you that's not the case. And I totally get that Chris Collinsworth is a part owner of Pro Football Focus, but even so, anyway, that's my rant over. But I just think that the points that were being made about the Dolphins' offensive line, that they're the worst in the league, was painfully ill-advised, because it's from people that haven't watched the first 6 games of the season.
Well, I think the line has narrative as well, which we'll get into as soon as Chris finishes soliloquy here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the line has some strengths and weaknesses. I think that this is the point that I made on a Twitter thread, sort of in response to the whole situation a couple days later after we'd done our podcast and everything. And which is that, we're building off the New England model. The New England model was built from the inside out, from the middle out, both offensively and defensively. What we're trying to do is solidify the middle of this shouldn't be news to anybody. Eric Flowers, 6'6" and 345 pounds. Solomon Kinley, 6'4" and 340 pounds. I mean, Ted Karras is a big 6'4" stout kind of guy, center. You're building from the inside out, and it's reflected in, even if you go to the analytics and not necessarily the ratings, which is the thing that I usually pick at with Pro Football Focus. But the middle of the offensive line, the guard center guard combo ranks, I think number 9 in the league or something like that in terms of pressures allowed on the quarterback. And it's the tackles. It's as we would suspect, but it's the tackles with the rookie Austin Jackson and Jesse Davis at right tackle, or now Jesse Davis at left tackle, which I cannot even believe is working, but it is. And then Robert Hunt at right tackle, also a rookie. They're letting up some pressures, but the pressures from the outside, I mean, Bill Belichick has always denigrated outside pass rush, edge rushers, pure speed rushers. It's why Brian Flores, he got here, the first thing that he did was trade Robert Quinn for a pack of cigarettes and then let Cameron Wake walk. They don't really rate pure speed edge rushers because Bill Belichick's always said the most useless place you can be on a football field is 2 yards behind the quarterback. So I think that you're seeing pressure from the edges, but in this model, in this philosophy, we expect the quarterback to step up against that pressure. We expect as long as you've solidified the middle of the offensive line, which the Dolphins very much have, with a big expenditure in Eric Flowers, and then bringing in Ted Karras for his experience, and then Solomon Kinley, that big 340 pounder. Solidify the middle of the offensive line so that the quarterback can step up against the edge pressure. And they're also, quite frankly, some of their pass blocking techniques are built as more of a slow down the edge rush, not necessarily completely block it out, slow down the edge rush so that the quarterback can get the ball out on time, the way the play was structured, with the timing that the play was intended. So the stuff, the pressures that they're letting up on the offense are coming from the edges, and it fits within the scheme. That's why I don't necessarily see it as being, bad, or as being them being a bad offensive line. And I don't know if these guys are able to really take account of all that, or what they're looking at, but I think that it's misguided.
Now, another narrative that came out there, and let's forget about Matt Hasselbeck. I don't even want to entertain that one because it's completely false. He was basically saying that this should tear apart the entire locker room, because the picture that he painted on Sunday was that you have 52 veterans, including Ryan Fitzpatrick, now with pitchforks going after Brian Flores because he just threw away the entire season by starting this incompetent lefty on Sunday. That's basically the picture that he painted. Okay. But we'll ignore that one. But what is kind of common everywhere is that the Dolphins are essentially punting on the season because they're starting Tua Tagovailoa. I don't believe it at all. Do you believe it, Simon?
No, but I think there'll be some bumps in the road. He is a very talented player, as we know, but he's taken 5 snaps in live action in pretty much a year. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be the sort of magic carpet to the playoffs that everybody thinks it's going to be. I just think that's realistic, no matter how good he is, and he is, but it's going to take a little bit of time. There's going to be some bumps, there's going to be some bruises. He's facing Aaron Donald at the weekend, for example. I think you have to be realistic about expectations, and the fact that he's coming off the injury. I can't wait to see him out there. I think he's going to be tremendous, but it will take time. No quarterback in history has come in and absolutely dominated week in, week out like a 10-year veteran in their first game. Joe Burrow's playing really well, but he's had a few bumps. Tom Brady had a few bumps when he came in. Even Matt Ryan threw a touchdown his very first throw when he was the 3rd overall pick, but he endured some bumps after that. So it's going to take a little bit of time, and I just don't suddenly see that the Dolphins are going to reel off 6 or 7 wins. And you might end up getting to a point in 6 games time where maybe we've gone 2-4, and you could make an argument that maybe Fitz's experience would have gone 4-2. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I think this time next year, it could be hugely special. And I think essentially for me, what I feel like is happening is that they're building up for next year, because it does feel like this roster is rounding into shape, and you want to get him as much experience as you possibly can on a decent team, which is what the Dolphins are. Although in a packed AFC, it's very difficult to see a path to the playoffs given how strong the AFC is. But this time next year, I think you're going to be looking at a potentially very special team.
Well, as far as the playoffs, I do see one team in the playoffs right now, which is an absolute garbage team, which is that Cleveland Brown team. They're awful. They're god awful. And I don't even know how the hell they're winning games, to be honest with you. But I do understand what you're saying. Chris, are they really punting on the season?
No, I think it's the exact opposite. I think, and I really believe that. I think that punting on the season, to me, listen, if Ryan Fitzpatrick kept going, we were already accusing his arm of looking kind of tired, like in week 1. Okay. And it didn't get better as things were going. Right. I mean, go straight to the Jets game. He's Fitzmagic magic, and he's doing cool things. But what is he going to look like in December? Kansas City, New England, Las Vegas, at Las Vegas Raiders, and then at Buffalo Bills. That's the December schedule. Okay. Or the last 4 games of the season. We're going to have to play that 4-game stretch really well to even get into the playoffs. It's like a playoffs before the playoffs. Okay. Mm-hmm. You lose and you're not in the playoffs most likely. or there's going to be situations in that December period where you lose and you're not in the playoffs. So I think that if you had Fitzpatrick and you kept him at quarterback, you're accepting that you're sort of a mediocre team, a 3-3 team, lost to the New England Patriots, lost to the Buffalo Bills, we beat the 49ers, but honestly, the 49ers were playing really bad football, and Jimmy Garoppolo was playing really bad football and came back too early. And then we beat CJ Beathard in the second half. I mean, it was in some ways it was a little unfair. But we beat some bad teams, and we're good enough to beat bad teams, I think, consistently. But when we get to that December portion, this was setting up to be the typical Wannstedt like fail to the finish at the end of the season, and then you either limp into the playoffs and get quickly escorted out, or you don't get into the playoffs at all. And that I thought was kind of a best scenario with Ryan Fitzpatrick still at the helm. I think this is going for something better. Okay, you're hoping to take the lull part of the schedule, and it is a little bit of it's getting a little bit tougher, but I mean it's a little bit of a lull in this part of the schedule, and you're trying to get Tua up to speed so that he can play through that December. And if you've got a fully up to speed Tua, who we've always said is very NFL ready for a rookie quarterback, right? I mean, that's as far as rookie quarterbacks go, this guy comes in a little bit more prepackaged than some others. In terms of his preparation and his training and what he can do, then I think that, that fully up to speed Tua is our best chance in December. It's our best chance to catch a heater and really ride it out. It wasn't going to happen with Ryan Fitzpatrick in December or in the playoffs. And so I think that this is as much about this year as it is about the future. I don't buy this bullshit about like this is tanking the season or this is giving up on the season. I think it's the exact opposite.
Now, Simon, you were talking about the AFC. What do you think are, because I think we had a hell of an indicator on Sunday. In my opinion, that looked to me on Sunday in Pittsburgh, the two best teams in the AFC. And I understand that Kansas City is the defending champion, but Kansas City, that game, they were scoring on special teams, on defense. They look like a complete team. They're probably in a league of their own because they're probably going to have the bye all the way through the playoffs. I think they'll overtake the Steelers. But that Pittsburgh Tennessee game, they look like the best two teams in the AFC. What do you think is the cream of the crop in the AFC?
I think Pittsburgh and Tennessee are easily Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Kansas City, I think are the teams. I mean, you look at it, Buffalo probably going to win the division. Baltimore have lost one game. Pittsburgh are unbeaten. Indianapolis are a good team. Tennessee, obviously a very good team. You got the Chiefs, you got the Raiders, you got the Browns. It's hard to see the Dolphins finding a path through all that to get into the playoffs. But for me, I think the Steelers are playing. That defense is outstanding. They can get to the quarterback. They can stop the run. Obviously, the loss of Devin Bush at linebacker is an issue, but they seem to have filled that. Secondary is playing really well. Fitzpatrick had a slow start to the season, but has come on the last couple of games. And offensively, there's so many weapons. You look at, Connor and Benny Snell and Samuels and the tight ends. And then there's that receiving, Washington, Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, obviously. They're absolutely loaded at the position. Deontay Johnson. They've got so much talent, and Roethlisberger is playing well and getting better week after week. So I think they are they're the strength of the AFC, and I think the Dolphins will find a very difficult path to get to the playoffs.
Well, I'll look at it like this, and you tell me what you think, Chris. I'm looking at it right now. If you have the division winners as Buffalo, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Tennessee, which looks like that's pretty much a lock. Then there's 3 playoff teams left. The Ravens own one of them. So that means that you have the Browns, the Colts, the Raiders, and the Dolphins going for 2 playoff spots. 4 teams for 2 playoff spots. Who scares you in that group? Because Like I don't see anything. Like what is that? Like who are those teams?
Yeah, I mean, but put Miami in among them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like does
they're
is
it's big.
Miami? Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, does Miami scare the others and the
No, it's
fans of
just
the other teams right
it's a
now?
bushel of teams.
Right. It's right. There's some potential noise makers all along the way. I mean, so yeah, Baltimore is. I think Baltimore, if we're not including them on a list with the Steelers and the Chiefs and certainly the Titans, if we're not including the Ravens, at least with the Titans, then I think we're doing a disservice to the Baltimore Ravens. I think they belong up there with them, with easily with the Titans, who are probably set to gonna end up winning the division. But inside in interdivisional play between the Titans and Colts, you never really know how that pans out. But I think that yeah, there's some noisemakers in the AFC. I think what you're shooting at is the Browns as the sixth seed, right? How how much of a moat have they built for themselves as the number six?
Remember, there's
Um,
7 seeds this year.
oh yeah, that's right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so the Browns as the sixth seed and
Yeah, the real competition. Like if
The Colts as the seventh seed. How
yes,
much of a moat have those two teams built around themselves at the bottom?
yeah,
And I think that's a fair question. I mean, include the Raiders, sorry, the Raiders in there, and you
hmm
never know. The Chargers are playing such strong football with Justin Herbert.
Yeah,
They never know when they catch heater, right?
that,
And then all of a sudden
that
they're in there.
Browns win yesterday was not a good one for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
no.
So I think that there's nothing too scary about the Browns right now. There's nothing, there's not that much that's too scary about the Colts or the Raiders, the Chargers, but we do play these teams. We play the Chargers, we play the Raiders.
Yes.
We'll get our chance against them. Uh, and so we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I mean, we play the Bengals, but that doesn't make a lick of a difference. So I guess we'll see what it is. But right now, I think it's really in the AFC. I think it's the Steelers and the Chiefs. That's just my opinion.
hmm
I don't include anybody else in there in that tier with those two. I think that they're the teams that are showing that they can just go out there and beat anybody, and they're doing it on both sides of the ball, really. And that's the scary part about the Chiefs, in my opinion, because they're doing it on the defensive side of the ball at times too.
Yeah, I watched a
And
lot of
we
that
know what
game.
Mahomes can do. Okay,
I watched a
I
lot
mean,
of that game, and the Broncos got a good defense because they were keeping that Chiefs
mhm,
offense in check in that game.
mhm,
It's just that you can't give up kickoff returns for touchdowns, and you can't throw pick sixes in
right,
back-to-back possessions. Like that doesn't work.
yeah. And as the game goes on, it's a little bit path dependent, so it becomes harder for the defense um, to just keep holding him back, keep holding him back, keep holding him back. When the scoreboard starts getting away from you and offensively, you can't do anything about it. Or it can be that way. So I felt bad for the Broncos that way. But yeah, the Chiefs and Steelers are just like, I mean, obviously the Chiefs aren't unstoppable because they lost a game to the Raiders,
hmm
but you know, I think they're both borderline unstoppable right now. And the only way the Dolphins are going to really catch on is if the defense keeps playing this way or getting better, and offensively, someone, a potential superstar at the quarterback position, trains on. I mean, that's it. That's the path. That's the way.
All right. Now, we were talking about this on the WhatsApp chat, and I was throwing out hypotheticals. And by the way, it was almost unanimous on my feed, although there was a few takers. But I put out the hypothetical Julian Edelman for a third round pick, and most people were saying no. And by the way, the reason I put a third round pick is because I put something out there that I'm pretty sure New England would not say no to. Okay. So, like, because if I put out there a hypothetical, okay, Julian Edelman for a fifth round pick, it's going to be 90% yes. on my feed, and that's not a real hypothetical. But Simon, you said no, and you had really good reasons for it. I don't know what Chris thinks, but you could repeat what you told me because I don't think you put it out on your feed, Simon.
Well, I mean, he'll be 35 next season. He can barely run because he's got severe knee injury. When Cam went out of the game on Sunday, he hadn't had a single target. Last week, he threw more passes than he caught passes. There are 25 receivers I'd rather give up a third-round pick for, with the greatest respect to Julian Edelman, who's been a great player. But he's he's at the end of his career. I mean, I saw Albert Breer say today that Edelman would be looking longingly at what was happening in Tampa Bay, but then made the point that he wouldn't even make the roster if even if he was traded there. So not for me. I would not be wasting a third-round pick on a 35-year-old wide receiver who's slowing down.
Chris?
I think that's fair. I mean, I haven't really evaluated what Julian Edelman is looking like nowadays. I mean, sir, I realize that there's a case to be made that he's not healthy enough to even make these rosters. And it's, it should be over to him. What I will say is that a lot of times, and I realize that sometimes you hit on these third round picks and you're like, well, third round pick turned into Jerome Baker, man. That's but a lot of times these third round picks are really just Michael Dieter or or Cordrea Tankersley or Leonte Carew. I mean, so I think third round picks do get overvalued by fans, just generally speaking, a little bit. So, I almost have like a disposition where I'm like, I'll spend a third rounder on anybody. Just because, and it's not, I'm not really anybody, that's not true, but it's sort of like, that's my default pick. That's my default pick that like has perceived value that I can dangle out there for somebody to pry somebody away from a team. And what I would do is I would look at all of these players around the league that I could potentially pry away from a team. And then I would decide which one is ultimately the best investment. And then, try and go for that third round pick, or dangle that third round pick for them. So, and most often it ends up, I think, being more like a fourth, but so I think people do overestimate or overvalue the third a lot of times, and in that way, I would be looking at acquiring somebody for our third round pick, because we have 2 2s and 2 1s, but and I think, not for nothing, but the hit rates in the next draft are going to be shit. Okay, all over the place. It's going to be borderline random. COVID has wreaked havoc on the. I speak to a few that are in the scouting business. It has wreaked havoc on their entire process, as far as trying, and the process is what gets an orderly success rate as you go, from the top of the first round all the way down, to the end of the first round, and then in the second round, the third round, and so on and so forth. That's where you get an orderliness in the success percentages as you go through time. Next year is going to be a shit show. Okay, you're gonna find guys. You're gonna find guys with massive value in like the 5th round or something like that, and then you're gonna completely bust on a bunch, which normally happens, but I'm saying this is going to happen more in the top 10, and so on and so forth. I think that so I would, the inherent volatility lessens the value of all draft picks next year. So I would be looking to burn one of those for a player, the right player in the right situation.
Yeah, now I don't understand what Tampa Bay is doing except, loading up for an obvious Super Bowl run this year, but what is Scotty Miller going to do? Like, he's just going to sit on the bench there with all his production and what he's gotten off to a pretty damn good start. Because
what's OJ Howard doing? Is he playing? Oh, has he? That's what he's doing.
Yeah, he's at a hospital.
He's
right now.
rehabbing.
Yeah, he's rehabbing is what he's doing. And Rob Gronkowski
Miller's
all of a sudden. So I don't know where the hell all these balls are going to go to because you already have Mike Evans. Okay, he needs his targets. Although Brady has decided that he's just going to ignore one guy each week. And as he ignores one guy each week, he's going to alternate it week by week. This week, he completely ignored that Mike Evans was on his field, but he still threw for like 350 and 4 touchdowns. And he was feeding Gronkowski, and Gronkowski was really close to having a 3 touchdown game. And he was getting down the field, breaking tackles. So that offense, like you're gonna add Antonio Brown to that. So I guess Scotty Miller just goes to the bench, never to be seen again.
It's an injury thing, Alf. In Peter King's column today, he spoke to Bruce Arians after the game, and Arians said that he spoke to his 3 receivers beforehand and said, on a percentage level, how healthy are you? And I think he said Mike Evans said he was 75%, Chris Godwin said he was 65%, and Scotty Miller said he was about 70%. They're all really banged up. They've been banged up all season. I mean, I think Godwin's only played 2 games. Evans has missed 2. Miller can't cut properly, so he's running post routes and things, but he's not running anything which is requiring a lot of cutting and stuff. So I think that's the reason why Brown's coming in, and he made it perfectly clear, Arians did to Peter King, that I mean, if the guy jaywalks, he's done. But I can understand why. I mean, morally, I can't understand why at all. Guy should never play in the league again if he's found guilty of what he's being accused of. But I can understand on a football level why he's coming in.
Yeah. Now, one guy that Chris just mentioned to me off the air as we were doing our rejoin here, Tyler Johnson. Like, this team does not run out of targets. Is there any way that one of them can pry free, or this is just all in for this year, Super Bowl or bust?
I think it's pretty much all in for this year. They're just going to try and make it work. They're going to carry 6 receivers because of the injuries. But you could see a scenario where, Tyler and Antonio Brown end up starting if the other 3 guys are struggling with injury. They still got Cambray, obviously, Jones and Fournette out of the backfield, and Gronkowski seems to be at least making himself a bit more useful than he was in the early weeks. So we shall see. I'm still not sold 100% on them, but they, the one unit that was really worrying me, which is defense, they've been outstanding, and especially their secondary. I think Carlton Davis especially has played like an all-pro corner this year, so they will be very interesting moving forwards.
Well, it's right now on Twitter that Everson Griffin and the Cowboys are looking to start selling, and why not? Because I don't know if you've seen that team over the weekend, but when you get absolutely destroyed by the Washington football team, you gotta have some self-examination. And the Cowboys are no longer talking Super Bowls or division titles at 6-10, but maybe scaling it back and dumping some talent. Everson Griffin seems to be the first guy to go. Any interest, Chris?
I don't know. Well, we'll have to see. I don't know if I'd still be interested in Everson Griffin, but that's a Brian Flores question, because he's very particular about what I think fits into the scheme and what does not. I thought you mentioned a decent one before, though, because I think we have to look at who's already doing this. Like, and the Minnesota Vikings already just gave what's his name,
Yannick
the
Ngakoue.
passer. Yeah, Yannick Ngakoue. They just sold him off like not long after they bought him, and they sold him off at a loss, right? I mean, so that tells you where that team is, and if that's where that team is, then who can you get from them? Like, who's a strong blocking tight end, or is Tyler Conklin a strong blocking tight end that you could use, or something like that? Would you go for, you mentioned Adam Thielen off air, like in our chats. I know you've got immense respect for Adam Thielen. Like, what do we think there? Is it they're going to obviously they keep Justin Jefferson, who's playing with his hair on fire a little bit, but there's BC Johnson, who played, by the way, with Preston Williams at CSU. There's I would look there. You're right. I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
is Alexander Madison any good? I don't know. So that's where I'd look. I'd look at a team that's already verified to be doing this.
Well, if you look at that team, it's loaded with these candidates. I'll give you another one. What do you think of Harrison Smith, with 1 year left on his contract? And that 1 year that's left, it's $10 million. That's it.
I think Michael Gallup at Dallas is a more interesting proposition.
That one's
That
nice.
is an interesting one.
Yeah.
With Amari Cooper, but with CeeDee Lamb especially. You think Michael Gallup could, you could probably extricate Gallup for a second rounder, maybe.
I don't know. That's a little bit rich. A second rounder for Gallup. I'd
he's a
rather
good
go into
player.
the draft. No.
But you just want to give up a third rounder for Julian Edelman.
Well, it was because I know that they'll say yes to that. I don't think that. I think Dallas. I don't know. Would Dallas?
Dallas would say yes to a second for Michael Gallup.
Probably. Yeah, I would say so because, well, that team needs so much on defense that they got to say yes to almost anything, right? Like if somebody went crazy and offered a second rounder for Ezekiel Elliott, they might do that too. No?
I mean, he had 1,100 yards last season as a second-year player at 17 yards a pop.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good player.
Yeah, he's one of the best goal route runners in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah, come to think of it, a second rounder is kind of juicy. Yeah, I probably
Yeah,
would.
funny, huh?
Yeah,
I think you'd have to be careful. You'd have to be careful on the defensive side of the ball, because their defense can, especially their secondary coverage, can be so different than what we have going in Miami. So, I adore Harrison Smith, obviously, but it'd be a pretty interesting question. What the exact fit is on that.
And when you pop open the sport track on Harrison Smith, it screams, "Yeah, I'm getting traded." You know what I mean? That's what it screams. It screams like, "Okay, we're gonna get out from under paying him $10 million next year, and we're gonna get a high pick for him because he's 31 now."
I've just had to redraft that 2012 draft, which is quite interesting. Harrison Smith obviously went in that draft. He went 29th to the Vikings. Obviously, I've redrafted him. He's gone 16th to the New York Jets. But it was very interesting.
Who may be begging for it a little bit, figuring him out is and this is not new, is Anthony Barr. I know they, Anthony Harris again, that secondary coverage, because it's my impression they play a lot of two, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Yeah. So and those safeties that play in that scheme this is my perception. Obviously, this is just one guy. My perception has been that they can be pretty specialized, and not necessarily, translate when you bring them around and pass them around, unless you're passing them to another team that plays like you do. So I don't know. That's where my reticence would be. But I mean, Anthony Barr, what can Miami do with him? I'm thinking, could they play him on the edge? And
Justin Reed is another.
Yeah.
The Texans are what, 1-6?
Yes, 1-6, and
he's not had a very good season.
By the way,
he's a very good player.
Oh, they need draft picks back. That's true.
They need draft picks.
We have them
as
all.
a goof. I would call them and ask them for Larry Mutunzel for a second round pick.
How do you guys feel about this?
How do you feel about Larry Mutunzel for a second rounder?
How do you? No. Yeah. No.
That's another rumor. That's going out there. They're saying that the Texans are planning to jettison, and that's the word that they used, their wide receivers, which means Kenny Stills is on the way out, Will Fuller on the way out, Brandon Cooks on the way out. Any interest on any of those three? Simon.
Kenny's had 12 catches this season and has barely played. Fuller has never, well, but actually both Fuller and Cooks have never consistently stayed healthy. Fuller's having a nice season, but not for me. They're too rich, given that I want guys who are available every week, and neither of them. Brandon Cooks has had a lot of concussions. They are not players that I would particularly want to be investing in.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that side. Yeah, I want availability. Although Brandon Cooks, it's intriguing, but yeah, the concussion question is a problem. Chris, any interest?
What's he making? Like, what's his? What are we talking about in terms of salary? It's $8 million this year.
Yeah, something
Brandon
like
Cooks.
that.
What's that?
Who are you talking about? Cooks.
Yeah,
Cooks. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's
actually.
I think
$7
it's
million.
It's $8 million this year, and he's 26 years old. I mean, I get that there's issues there as far as his availability, but he's 27 years old.
6 years.
That's true. That's true. He does manage. He does usually man. I don't know. I haven't looked too much, but doesn't he usually manage to be pretty productive even with all the new teams?
Yeah, he has a million 1,000-yard seasons. That's true.
He's had 1, 2, 3, 4,000-yard seasons in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You know what? The more I look at it, I think the Dolphins can pry Will Fuller from them for a song. He's a free agent at the end of the season.
But that's the guy that never plays, right? Isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, but when he does, he catches 90-yard touchdowns.
Like never plays.
Yeah, he just runs really, really, really fast in a straight line.
I don't know. He's great. I like him. I've always liked him going back to college. I'm just like, we're talking about over, what is this? This is 4.5 years. He's missed about 40, 72. He's missed about a third of the games he could have played in.
Yeah.
He's missed a third of his games.
Yeah, he looks like he could be like you just them.
You get him and you're like, okay, we're getting him for 10 games a year.
670 yards is the most.
That's I Brandon Cooks, and this is what made me think of Brandon Cooks and wonder what the actual money situation is. It's just one, we could use a deep speed threat like him. I do believe that. Two, he was on the Patriots when Brian Flores was there. I don't know what he thinks of him, but he was there. So that means that coin flip, does he have a positive impression of him or a negative impression of him? I don't know. But it is a coin flip, and if it's a 50% chance, it's a 50% chance that he likes him, so there's that. And then there's, I think just the age and the salary actually at $8 million with half of it already, more or less, almost half of it already paid, kind of makes some sense. And you're not on the hook. You're not on the hook for the future, the future next guarantees. I mean, you don't have to pay the roster bonuses in 2021 or 2022 and stuff like that if you don't want to. It could make some sense. I'm just saying it could make a lot of sense.
I think actually you'll see trades on Thursday of this week. I know the trade deadline is next Tuesday, which is obviously election day for you guys, but also with the 5-day protocol in terms of COVID testing, that would be an extra week that somebody would have to sit out if they were dealt on the deadline. Whereas on the Thursday, it would mean that they were available to and eligible and registered in time to play next weekend. So I suspect Thursday would be quite a hot day.
And one last hypothetical before Simon tells us, what to do with your nether regions. Would you trade Ryan Fitzpatrick? Simon?
No.
The Cowboys go crazy. Jerry Jones gets on the phone and says, look, I might die. It's very possible I might die soon. I want to win this division. Here's the third
Michael Gallup
do you
for
do
him.
it?
If you trade Michael Gallup for him, I'd take it.
Oh, I would too. I'll drive Ryan Fitzpatrick to Dallas for Michael Gallup.
Yeah.
But other than that, not much interest?
No, not me.
I don't think so. He's too valuable to what's happening.
Like you said, if it's something ridiculous, Simon, but
it won't.
But and think of it this way: you're trying to train Tua on for decade plus of being in Miami, right? And I think severing that relationship, whereas right now Fitzpatrick would be a very valuable set of eyes and a very valuable input. He's played everybody in the league. The guys that have played everybody are really valuable in that room. And on your sidelines and backing you up and giving you input. So he's too valuable to Tua Tagovailoa that way. And that's if, hey, Tua could get hurt. And then we're down to what? Jake Rudock?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or that Sinnott guy, that Reed Sinnott.
Oh, is that who we have on the practice squad right now? Reed Sinnott?
Yeah. And guess what number he wears?
Does he wear what's his name's number? Josh Rosen's former number?
No, 17.
Oh, 17. Okay.
They gave him 17.
Ooh.
Yeah, former future Ring of Honor quarterback Ryan Tannehill.
Yeesh.
Yes. All right, Simon, tell the people how they can be nice and smooth for Tua's debut on Sunday.
5RSN is the code for 20% off, where you can buy yourself a lawnmower 3.0. Everybody's got one. If you haven't got one, what the hell have you been doing? There's an election coming next weekend, or next week even. You need to shave your nuts for the election because...
Buy it with your stimulus money.
Exactly. Less taxes, more money to shave your nuts.
All right, next Thursday, maybe, or sometime later on this week, we will preview Rams, Dolphins, and Tua Tagovailoa's debut as a starting NFL quarterback. But till then.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.